Haj Amin al-Husseini was in 1929. What was he upset about the Jewish state of 1948? What about the hundreds of attacks since Islam came into existence around the year 700 against massacre after massacre? Was that about the Jewish state of Israel that didn't exist for the next 1,300 years?
Palestinian Authority, if they were going to become the government of a Palestinian state, would never in a million years allow one Jew to live there, ever.
I think there's a deeper truth that all of these facades that mankind has created and believed in, with all of their heart, we've built these idols that really believe that's all going to crumble to the ground. And that's what we're going to see happening right now.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should always be directly connected to the land and people of Israel. Guys, happy to have you with us. I'm here with Joshua Waller, Rabbi Ari Abramowitz. Unfortunately, Jeremy could not be here today, but we're happy to be here with you. 4 countries are now announcing that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. And in the last few days, new countries have been adding to the list every single day. My question is, have they now sealed their fate? Israel, in response to another failed ceasefire deal with Hamas, is reportedly threatening to annex part of the Gaza Strip. Egypt is reportedly training hundreds of civilians to take over, training Egyptians to take over security coordination in the Gaza Strip. And we're still asking the question, the world's asking the question, is there actually starvation in Gaza? And big question on everyone's minds, what do these earthquakes and tsunamis have to do with Israel? We're going to ask Ari that question at the end of the show today. Guys, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow along wherever you're watching or listening. Let us know in the comment sections if you are a new subscriber. Happy to have you with us. So I wanted to start out with the 4 countries, obviously led by France, who have now announced they will recognize a Palestinian state. We have a UN assembly coming up in September. Some countries have already announced they're recognizing a Palestinian state. I believe they're all going to use their opportunity at the United Nations to officially recognize a Palestinian state. And big question is obviously, is this a literal fulfillment of prophecy? I mean, Zechariah 14 says all nations will come against Jerusalem. And this week, you've had a new country almost every single day. France, United Kingdom, the little island of Malta, and now Canada has joined the throng. I'm going to just read a couple of quotes from the leaders of these countries. You have Emmanuel Macron writing, quote, "True to its historic commitment to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, I've decided that France will recognize the state of Palestine." And apparently, the report is that he said the situation is urgent because we have a need to end the war in Gaza and because the population is suffering. That seems to be a theme in this. So my question to you guys is, what does the recognition of a Palestinian state or the idea of creating a Palestinian state have to do with the war or the suffering in Gaza? Like, how are these two things connected? Because according to these world leaders, if we create a Palestinian state, somehow it's going to end the war in Gaza. And I don't know what those two things have to do with each other.
I think possibly I'm just throwing some ideas out here because I am sleep deprived from being up all night patrolling Judea. So that would explain why I'm a little bit out of it. But I think both of them are engineered to undermine the legitimacy and the veracity of the state of Israel. Both of them. Meaning Hamas from the very beginning, what do when they find out, when Israel drops leaflets saying civilians, children, families leave, there are terrorists here. What does Hamas do? They send the children in. Those leaflets are being used as a warning for Hamas to send the children exactly there so they can broadcast to the Piers Morgans of the world, so they can broadcast to the entire international community. All of a sudden, a very fractured world when it comes to Israel as an international community, and they all jump on it and turn against Israel. So it's like two, like infantry and cavalry or tanks and artillery in the same war against undermining Israel that we see Hamas doing. And the Palestinian state, the very idea of Palestine, is, I think, the best description of that. One of the founders of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, right? Zuhar Muhsin, what he said, the Palestinian people does not exist. This is his words. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for Arab unity. Only for political and tactical reasons do we speak today about the existence of a Palestinian people. That's what it is. And so what
Why would he say such a thing like that? I'm sure that was all in
this
Arabic.
was in the 70s in an interview in a Dutch newspaper where he's just saying the quiet part out loud.
Well, let's just mention too, the PLO was established in 1964, which is before Israel liberated Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and Egypt was in control of the Gaza Strip right at that time, and the Sinai, and basically that idea of creating a Palestine Liberation Organization, the only thing that they could have been their desired mission was to take over the entire land of Israel, meaning Tel Aviv and Jaffa and Jerusalem and every other city.
Right, what you're saying is you're undermining the claim that people make that it's about the occupied territories or the West Bank, which is about Judea and Samaria, which is ludicrous and absurd. And Haj Amin al-Husseini was in 1929. What was he upset about the Jewish state of 1948?
Right.
What about the hundreds of attacks throughout since Islam came into existence around the year 700 against massacre after massacre? Was that about the Jewish state of Israel that didn't exist for the next 1,300 years? What's it about? And so when you look at Europe and you look at Islam and these Muslim, or what he said, it's to really get Arab unity. Do you think the Iranians care about the Palestinian people? Not at all.
No.
Zero.
No.
Zero. Do you think the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan?
Yeah.
None of them care about them. But what do they use them as a tool, as a pawn to destroy Israel from within, right? So when you look all the way back, this really goes to the very spiritual foundations of when Abraham said to Eliezer and Ishmael, stay here with the donkey. I'm taking my son to Mount Moriah. That Isaac was the chosen one, and that it was a source of tremendous jealousy that is so deeply, almost epigenetically embedded in the consciousness of the Arab peoples, Islam going all the way back. And then you look at Europe and you listen to Tucker Carlson, and you just have to listen a little bit deeper to certain lines. Like I listened to the Ted Cruz interview, and you hear it right there. Ted Cruz says, well, biblically, I support Israel. I support the Jewish people. That's what the Bible says. It's a biblical mandate. And what did Tucker Carlson say? You think they're the real Jews?
Right.
They're not the real. That's what the whole thing is about. You could shave off the rest of that whole thing where Tucker Carlson builds this entire house of cards and political reasoning about why he thinks that Israel is bad and the blah, blah. But it's really about that. Mm-hmm. It's about that goes all the way back to Esau's grievance against Jacob.
Yeah.
You know, that they usurped the birthright, the chosenness. And when you really see it through that prism, which is the real prism and the true prism, even if the Arabs of today and the Carlsons of today don't understand it consciously, they're not aware of it, subconsciously, that's what it's really about.
Yeah. I just now remember this video, and I'll see if I can find it and have the editors put a clip in here. But it's I think it's called the Ask Project. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but a guy, he goes into the Arab areas here in Judea and Samaria, and he asks them questions. And he also goes into the Israeli communities and asks them questions, like politically charged questions. So recent video, he went into Arab towns, we're talking like Ramallah and Shechem and like very Palestinian Arab towns. And he asked them, like, what would happen to the Jews if a Palestinian state were created? Like, what would your vision be for the Jewish people here? Every single one of them said they would be killed, or they would be exterminated, or there would be no more Jews. Like, it's something the world still hasn't fully grasped, that the idea of a Palestinian state means the extermination of the state of Israel and the extermination of the Jewish people. That's like a declared intention of the so-called Palestinian people. It's not like a vague idea. If you go into their offices, they have a map of the entire state of Israel, and they have Palestine plastered across it. From the river to the sea is always followed by to Jaffa, to Tel Aviv, to Haifa, to Ashdod, to Ashkelon. We'll be back with the rest of the podcast in a second, but first I want to give you something practical that you can do to support the land and the people of Israel. If you're like a lot of people I know and you love Israel, but you aren't able to come here to the Holy Land, or if you're inspired by the Jewish families living out God's promises on the front lines, or if you simply want to walk out God's words to Abraham Abraham in Genesis 12, blessing the nation of Israel, you should check out our friends at Blessed by Israel. What these guys do is they bring the amazing products from family-owned businesses in the biblical heartland to people all over the world. From the land of Israel straight to your doorstep, you can enjoy awesome products such as extra virgin olive oil, coffee roasted to perfection by Agro Cafe. I drink this stuff every single day, multiple times a day. Delicious raw honey, jewelry, organic spices, handcrafted ceramics, and much, much, much more. All of these products are from wonderful small family-owned businesses in Israel, majority of them in Israel's heartland. You can be a part of encouraging and investing in the people of Israel and enjoy high-quality products at the same time. Head over to blessedbyisrael.com. That's blessedbyisrael.com to purchase beautiful boutique products and make your impact today. You can even use the code INVEST for $5 off your first order at blessedbyisrael.com. That's blessedbyisrael.com, or click the link in the description below. Now, back to the podcast.
There's certain premises that are just never even asked that are so basic. Like they say, Judea and Samaria, Palestinian state. Let's say, God forbid, 1,000 God forbid, such a thing were to happen.
Yeah.
Couldn't the Jews of Judea say, okay, so fine, we'll be just, living here in the Palestinian state, just like we have over 2 million Arabs with full citizenship in Israel, enjoying all of the rights and the privileges without a lot of the obligations of the Jews of Israel. Why can't we just be that in the Palestinian state? Why in every single plan, if there's a Palestinian state, do the Jews need to be ethnically cleansed and physically ripped out of their homes for this Palestinian state when we have Arab citizens of Israel?
Yeah,
it's not even a question that's asked.
Yeah, you're saying flip the script, and the answer is obviously, well, never in 1,000 years would they allow that.
Right.
Palestinian Authority, if they were going to become the government of a Palestinian state, would never in a million years allow one Jew to live there, ever.
Or they could say, yeah, you're welcome. 10 minutes after the establishment of the state,
right. There'd be
total
a bloodbath. Yeah.
man, no different than the Druze at the hands of the ISIS and Jolan.
Here's what I find fascinating about this whole thing is that the leaders that are coming out and saying, oh, we need this Palestinian state. For one, I don't think that, as we're speaking about, they obviously don't know what they're talking about. And they don't understand the real history of Israel. They don't understand what Palestine, what does that even mean? Who is that people group? The people group they're referring to is a mishmash people group from all the different Arab nations around. It's not a singular people group. It's a tribal proxy groups that came from these different countries in order to settle lands and try to increase the jihad or the political wars of Islam in order to take over more lands, right? That's their goals. And they came from, just for proof and point, our next door neighbor over here on the hilltop next to us, his name is Al-Masri. For all the Americans and all the English speaking people out there, that name just runs right over their head. They're like, of course, Al-Masri, indigenous to the land of Israel, and our, let's say, land of Palestine, according to his narrative. Well, for all the Arabs, they literally just belly laugh over because his name means the Egyptian. So he's the Palestinian Egyptian. Of course. It makes just sense, right? Of course it doesn't make any sense. These are tribal entities, and obviously he's from Egypt. He came as a proxy tribal. Maybe he had some sort of disgruntled thing going on, and he fled that to come to a place, Israel, in order to achieve some sort of better life. And that happened all over the Arab world. There was a safe zone for Arabs to flee from these, whatever it was. And guys, if we
including Yasser Arafat, the head of the Palestinian Authority, born in Egypt.
Born in Egypt, yeah, right. Well, and if you just go over to any Arab village that we just mentioned earlier, and you just stand on the outskirts of the city for a minute, you will hear, not the IDF gunfire, you will hear fighting in the inside, machine guns, live machine guns fighting, tribe against tribe, all over the place. Now, this is what my big point that I wanted to make here is that these leaders are not your strong leaders. No bash to Canada and no bash to the French, but
why not?
I'm just saying, I don't want to it's not a personal thing.
They're kind of asking for it.
We have some Canadian volunteers right here right now. I respect them. Of course. I respect the people of Canada. I respect the French, but their countries, their leaders are not known for being like these. Oh, wow. You hear Canada? Oh, you hear about the French? And again, this is not some sort of bash. It's just that they are joining, just like the neighbor over here, a proxy kind of ideology war against the Jewish nation. And it's not of strength. It's more of a weakness because, as you know, Canada's being run over by jihadis. France is being run over by jihadis. It's not an area of strength for them. This is an area of weak. The UK, my goodness, these people that are signing off for this are scared to death about what's going to happen in their countries.
I've always seen a fundamentally different role that you guys play than we play in the world. And I'm not just talking about as individuals, but as nations, as people. It is your job to go and argue the truth of the God of Israel to the nations. That is not, I don't feel like that's necessarily on this facet, on this dimension, my role. My role is to really look within and say, what is God telling us as the Jewish people? What opportunity is this? Canada actually played a key role in the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948. Mm-hmm. They were arguing and advocating for voting for Israel to become a state. Mm-hmm. Part of what's happening now is for Israel to look at the increasing number of nations of the world that are saying Palestine is a state, meaning that Israel essentially one step away from saying is not. Mm-hmm. And for us to say we are a state, and the reason we are a state is not because of any international legitimacy. Right. You don't get to determine that we are a state or we're not. In some ways, 1948 was a little bit of a mistake for us to make our self-reflection of statehood contingent upon the consensus of the international community.
A UN vote. Many people base it back to a UN vote.
Because if we give it back to the UN vote, then the UN can vote away our sovereignty and our statehood.
That's right.
When in reality, the very first verse of the Bible, of the Torah, says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'haaretz. God created the heavens and the earth. And the question that is asked by the great commentator Rashi, why does the entire Bible start there? If it's about the commandments for the Jewish people, why doesn't it start with the first commandment? And the answer is because towards the end of days, when the nations come against you and claim that the land of Israel does not belong to you, you are to respond and say, drum roll, God created the world, and he gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people, and he gets to give the land to whom he pleases.
Wow.
That's right.
That's the answer. That's the reason. That's what all of this is about. It's all happening for us. It's not happening to us. It's happening for us.
Wow.
And a big part of this is for us to look up and not look around us and be arguing in the, sometimes I feel like we get so lost in the absurdity of these accusations, and we're just lost debating and thinking that we can say anything that will ever get them to come around. When in reality, the only thing that will really get the nations to come around is us looking inside and turning our eyes up.
How old is this idea in Judaism, like of the Jewish people because we're like living in the middle of it. That's why fascinating for me that you just said that, because it's like, okay, that goes all the way back to the very beginning, that the Jewish people already have this, like, there's going to be, at the end of days, there's going to be this time when the nations all come against us. And here's what you're going to say, like, unbelievable.
Right. There's a prophetic element to that. So there's so many prophetic elements that people just gloss over and don't really reflect upon, that even be like, oh, okay, well, that's a rabbi and the rabbinical, and
it's happening.
I mean, hundreds of years ago, he said that this is what's going to happen, and that's exactly what is happening. And all the nations are turning against us. But that's what's happening. What's happening right now is a revolution, not in the Columbia University keffiyeh wearing Intifada revolution. No, a real revolution, like we've said before on the show, is when the minute hand revolves one revolution around the clock, it goes back to the beginning. What we're at right now in the story of the unfolding story of human history is the ultimate revolution of going back to the very beginning. And that's what we're seeing playing out on every different front. And it doesn't take a leap for anyone that is biblically, spiritually minded to see that all facets of humanity and creation are converging right now towards this concept of redemption. Even the prophets say that as redemption is approaching, there will be spiritual earthquakes. The foundations of the world will be starting to shake, and that will manifest on the physical realm as it always does also. And we're seeing there was an earthquake that happened yesterday, 8.2. Right? The tsunami is expected around the world. And they're saying, because I'm not a seismologist, but they're saying that they're expecting 4 to 5 more earthquakes in the upcoming days.
Right.
Wow.
Right? And the prophets say, Ezekiel says, in my zeal and fiery wrath, there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves on the ground, and every person on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be overturned. The cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. And I think that while that is also true on a terrestrial physical realm, I think there's a deeper truth that all of these facades of illusions and multiplicity that mankind has created and believed in with all of their heart, we've built these idols that really believe that's all going to crumble to the ground. And that's what we're going to see happening right now. And unfortunately, it needs to happen. I take the blame for it. It needs to happen where Israel is all alone.
Just quickly, while you're on that note, just geographically, there is a large rift that runs directly under the Temple Mount and runs through the mountains of Israel. That's one of mass magnitude. I don't know back then that the prophets of Israel knew the deep. Did they have the technology back then to understand that? I think they were literally, it's prophecy. Right. And now the prophecy is aligning with a physical reality on the ground that now our technologies, as we look and we can see deep into the earth and we see what's going on there, it's factual. Well, there actually is a massive, rift there, but lying underneath the Temple Mount that lines up exactly with what the prophet
exactly with what the prophet said in Zechariah chapter 14.
Right.
He says, "Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations, as when he fights in the day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split in two from east to west, forming a very great valley. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will reach to Azal. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah." Right? So we're talking about like this massive earthquake that's going to happen.
Right.
Isaiah talks about it. The earth is broken apart. The earth is utterly shaken. The earth is violently shaken. The earth staggers like a drunkard. It sways like a hut in the wind. Its transgressions weigh heavily upon it, and it falls and will not rise again. There's something foundational that's going to happen. And by the way, tangentially, it says that the water will flow from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. When you come out to the Aragot farm and you stand on this breathtakingly beautiful and dramatic valley of the Aragot, it is that valley that King David fled from Saul, in which he composed the Psalms of Israel, that will be filled. We're going to have beachfront property out there.
That's right.
Right? Because it's going to go straight from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea, and that's one of the primary tributaries it will take.
Well, again, that was all prophecy, but when they were putting in this mass infrastructure in Jerusalem over the just recent years, and it's still not finished yet. They're still in progress of this. As they're putting in, they're putting in this big train that goes straight from the Ben Gurion Airport all the way into the old city Jerusalem, straight to the wall, the Western Wall. That's the project they're bringing. So millions of people can fly into Tel Aviv and then be in Jerusalem within 20, 30 minutes.
At the temple.
At the temple, literally. That's the whole work that's happening. I don't think anybody else will say that it brings them to the temple.
To purchase your sacrifice on the app while you're on the train on the way to the temple.
Right. But 2 goats and you get a pigeon for free.
Right. Yeah. But here's the deal. When they were doing that because they had to go deep into the ground to do these elevators and things that they're putting in for mass elevators to be dropped into the plaza, the Western Wall plaza there. What did they find? They found a massive river that flows underneath Jerusalem. You've heard about that. You heard that they found mass water source. That was another thing that people didn't realize that. Okay, they're actually literally, you're talking about the water that already is there. It's just once that it comes to the top, once this earthquake happens that the prophets outline is going to happen, well, it's already there.
By the way, the city of David has just nearly completed the entire original pilgrimage road that goes up to the Temple Mount, the original pilgrimage road.
Opening in September, I heard.
Opening in September. That's what this is really all about. And something is starting to shift inside my heart a little bit in ways that I'm still trying to make sense of. So it takes a little bit of vulnerability and courage to put it out there. But I've been on the show and I've not exactly been known for sounding like a pacifist, right? In the sense that, yes, I have a love for humanity. I really do. Like, I'm a medical clown. I go to hospitals to make kids laugh. I don't care if it's little Moshe or little Mohammed. I want to give the Arabs in the villages near us, I want to give them hitchhikes when it's storming out, but I can't because they may stab me.
Are you admitting on camera you're not politically correct?
No, but the truth is that I'm thinking when I talk about these things that are coming from a very visceral, emotional, I think healthy place, when I say, take the leaders of Hamas out of the prisons and broadcast to all of Gaza as we execute them in humiliating ways and say, let the hostages out. And so I'm like, and then I look at the starving Gazan children, and there's a part of my heart that calluses around it and says, you know what? This is Hamas doing this to you, but the civilians of this Gaza were supporting and have continued to support the massacre, the vicious, brutal rape, beheading, massacre of the Jewish people. So there's a part of me that's like that, but on a deeper level, I think a more transcendent level, we as the nation of Israel need to start taking responsibility, not just for ourselves. That's a good start, but for the nations of the world. And a big part of taking responsibility, when you do it from a place of strength, and the only strength that we have is the God of Israel. But when we understand that he's with us, the natural expression of that would be compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion. And so we need to have compassion. Compassion for the greatest enemies that face us, for the Candace Owens. My heart hurts for her. She was such a beautifully, eloquently articulate spokesman of truth, and it seems like she's possessed by and I think she's trying to tell the truth, and for Iran, have compassion for Iran, whose entire essence from morning to night is totally committed to murdering Jews that they never even have any connection to. Compassion for the nations of the world, and understand that they want blessing. They want godliness and light. And why are they not getting it? Because we're not stepping up and rising to the occasion. Because we're not going to the Temple Mount and building that temple for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what this is all about. It's the foundation. And I think the reason I tell you this, the reason I drive up here hours all the time is because this is the only platform where we can really talk about the very deepest root of what the secondary root some people talk about. Since October 7th, a lot of people are like, we cut the head of this off the snake. Go to Iran, they're the core of everything. But are they really? Are they really? On a certain dimension, yes, but on the deeper dimension, it's the Temple Mount. It's building the temple on the Temple Mount and bringing God's presence into the world. And if that makes me sound like a religious extremist, fine, then I am. But it's a religious extremism that is born from a place of love for humanity, of understanding that that's what's going to end all of this bloodshed and hatred and jealousy. It's only going to be when we bring God into the world. And that's what we're here for.
I think when you say that you're coming from this place of strength and understanding, that's what the world's looking for. If you look at the stats in America right now, there is less support for Israel's war in Gaza than there was for Israel's war with Iran, if you can even separate those two. The geographical wars that happen on those two fronts, very connected, obviously. The Iranians are funding the Hamas, and it's all interconnected. But the physical war, that 12 days that Israel spent in Iran, has mass support in America. Why? I believe it's because Israel is very strong. Israel just knocked it. In our opinion, they maybe could have been even stronger. But there's a lot more support when Israel acts with integrity and strength of just commitment to do the job. And when they did that, America, mass support. In Gaza, what we see is some kind of political situation that's very hard to, and we're losing support in America. And I bring this in right now because you mentioned the starving of Gaza. And I think that this is also playing into these, I would say, weaker of the countries that are aligning themselves with this Iranian ideology of destroying Israel. They're falling prey to the propaganda. Even Trump himself, President Trump, and his wife Melania were concerned. Melania, about the children of Gaza. They were seeing the pictures coming out. And unfortunately, the world does not understand the Middle East. They don't understand the Gazan propaganda war that Israel faces. And Israel is not coping well with it. And Israel looks weak as it relates to Gaza. And people are not believing in Israel anymore. We're seeing a fall right now, pretty massive fall in support for Israel over what's happening in Gaza. And I think we need to address this now because there's so much misinformation about what's happening there in relation to starving children.
On the most basic level, I can understand these Christians that think that and say that. Because a lot of times you just put aside all of the words that you just said, because there were a lot of words and they were all true. But in the end of the day, these Christians that wake up in the morning and read their Bible and want peace and goodness in the world, turn on the news, and how many starving children in Gaza. Okay, fine. So this kid had a disease and they're being used in this and this and that. But they're like, this people, Israel is supposed to be a light unto the nations. And all I'm getting is downloads on my computer of starvation and severed limbs and war. And like, is this what you are here for, Israel? How much, how much stock can I continue to be put into Israel when they're not giving me this blessing that I'm wanting.
Right.
And but at the same time, I think it does take a certain level of humility to be able to say, I'm going to stand with Israel and the Jewish people because they are coming from maybe they're not implementing the war as we think, because the Prince by Machiavelli, he says that when you do something good, you should just drag it out over time. And when you do something that will be perceived as bad, do it fast and quick. Israel does the opposite. The cutting off the aid and the water and it's just dragging out this thing that looks so horrible. Yes, maybe we need to do it within the very limited prism of perspective and options that we think are at our disposal. But maybe we need to step back and understand that we need to take an entirely different angle altogether. And so there maybe is some legitimacy. We don't need to be so reactive and defensive and say, these Christians say they don't support Israel. Well, why? Let's hear what they're saying. Maybe there's something to it.
Well, the question is, I guess, two things. First, just to catch people up real quick, and hopefully people are seeing the truth coming out now. But I was looking at an article that I just received and said, if you Google real famines in the world, countries like Yemen, South Sudan, Haiti, Congo, Chad, Somalia come up. Real famines, real starvation happening in the world. But what people have seen in their news feeds this week is a couple of images of children with illnesses from Gaza. And now all the major media networks have been forced to make retractions, but we all know that once a lie gets out there, it's impossible to go back and retract on it, right? So the images are out there. The most infamous one is a poor child that Israel actually evacuated from Gaza and sent to, I believe, Jordan for medical treatment. He's now in Jordan at the moment getting medical treatment because he has a hereditary disease. And most of the images that people have seen of starving children in Gaza are of ill, sick children with hereditary disease. It's now a fact from what I've seen that 40% of Gazans marry their cousins, and therefore there's a lot of genetic issues in the Gazan civilian population. So you could go at it from multiple angles. Like if there were actually real famine and starvation happening in Gaza widespreadly, then the media wouldn't have to use the 5 images of sick childern in Gaza. I don't have anything to do with starvation,
right? Because this is not a starving child. That's the point. Is it's someone of a really terrible problem. Correct.
Yeah. So that's one thing. But you could also go at it and you could read the statistics of the hundreds of millions of tons of aid that Israel's allowed in, and the medical I think I read 14 medical hospitals that Israel's built, like pop-up military kind of hospitals in Gaza to make sure that people can still be treated. And we could go through the hundreds of statistics, right? Or we could say, why is Israel required to ensure that the people of Gaza don't starve? Because it is probably a true fact to also say that there's hunger in Gaza. It's a war. It's a war zone. It's a horrific war zone. Hamas is stealing the aid. They're selling massive amounts of aid at a high profit. I think somebody said Hamas has now made like $1 billion in profit from selling stolen aid.
They've stayed alive through it.
And the question is, why is Israel responsible for whatever's going on to the civilian in Gaza?
I have to add to this because the UN has its special envoy or special task force that deals with specifically the Palestinians. They have all the other groups of people that are refugee groups around the world, and they themselves have politicized this one people group that is above all the other people groups, and that's the Arabs of Israel, and specifically they call Palestinians. Now that aid whole company or group is called the what do they call that, the aid group for
the UN group, the UNRWA,
right? So the UNRWA is dedicated just to this one thing. They don't take care of any refugees around the rest of the world. They only.
We could also talk about the fact that they had like 100 trucks just sit of food and just rotting in the sun because the UN couldn't deliver it.
More than that. On October 7th, the UNRWA workers were a part of the massacre of Israel that happened. Those employees were a part of that. That's official. That's documented. That's a problem. Now let's dig one step deeper. That is so unbelievable that the world should just shake and end the UN altogether. Now is they know there's a little loop here because they're pro Hamas and they're deep in they're pro Hamas, which is crazy. So they found a loophole. Under the skies of international aid, they could bring thousands and hundreds and, all these trucks, tons and tons and tons of food in order to do exactly what you said, Ari. Fund the operation behind the scenes.
That's why they came out against the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was going to be a private initiative that's going to get the food to Gaza. And what did Hamas do? Open fire on anyone that was trying to take the food. And who was blamed? Israel.
Yeah.
Who was blamed? Israel, because the UN needs to control it for exactly that reason. And by the way, is anybody checking the bags of rice?
No.
What's in these bags of rice? And nobody is checking to see if there's weapons in there, which there definitely are.
Yeah.
So we have to understand what's really going on. But the question would just be begged again and again. So if no nation has ever been requested or expected to feed their enemies in an existential war, why is Israel being, we're constantly saying, why are we different? Why are we different? It's not fair. Double standard, double standard, double standard. And then we need to say, because we're different.
Yeah.
We actually are different. Mm-hmm. And we need to embrace that and understand that we have the difference is that these other nations aren't responsible for each other. We're responsible for humanity in a way that they're waiting for us to take responsibility.
One last point on the UNRWA situation under the UN supervision. There is stockpiles, thousands of tons of food sitting in Gaza right now. The UN is not releasing it because it's not meeting their way of funding the Hamas, fueling Hamas way, right? Because Israel said it needs to go through this different funnel. That funnel that Israel's providing doesn't allow the UN to do what they really want to do, and that's to fund the operation behind the scenes. Therefore, let's walk this through. The UN is less concerned about any kind of hunger in Gaza. They're more concerned about...
I don't think they're concerned at all. Yeah.
They're not concerned about that at all. What they're really concerned with is giving funding to the worst terror group that's ever hit, ISIS-style terror group, even worse, if there could be. That's what exists in Gaza right now. And that's what the UN is trying to fuel through a whacked out, horrible people behind the scenes that are trying to fuel this thing and to destroy Israel. The thousands and thousands of tons of food is sitting there. Israel has a way to get it in if they wanted to use it, but they're saying no to that, and they're stopping that because they don't care about the children.
GHF has offered to take it in.
Exactly.
UN won't let them
That's
take
what I'm
it in.
saying. But they need to use their source because it's not about getting food to these people. It's about getting the funding. Because Hamas takes it, then they need to up the price, sell it in order to keep going.
The great irony here is that the United Nations doesn't recognize that Hamas has part of their game plan, which is said out loud constantly every single day by the Hamases of the world, including Hamas, is the global jihad. Their war is against the UN. It's against all the nations of the world to spread the jihad to the entire world. And the UN doesn't understand that they're actually facilitating their own demise. France, who has said these Gazans are being so persecuted that they're refugees, legal refugees. What did they not realize? Right. That part of their national bylaws is that they must accept refugees into France, making France now someone that needs to bring in Hamas terrorists that are going to be killing French children in their playgrounds. And so they're really laying the groundwork for their own downfall and demise, which is quite tragic.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, the ICC or the ICJ should hold France accountable to that idea, that if they want to recognize a Palestinian state or recognize these refugees from Gaza, now they're legally required to take them in. I want to go back to the countries, the list that's growing by the day now of countries recognize a Palestinian state. I want to read the statement from the Prime Minister of the UK and then from Canada, and you guys are going to laugh at the one from Canada. So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer issued an ultimatum telling the UK cabinet that the decision to recognize a Palestinian state would be approved in September unless the Israeli government takes, quote, substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza. And he also made it clear that Israel could not annex anything in the West Bank, which is just funny. But that's not the most hilarious one. But again, it's that whole idea of like somehow this idea of a Palestinian state, which is a false piece of propaganda that's as old as time, or basically as old as Israel, basically 1948. But somehow that can bring peace to the region, and somehow it can bring an end to the war in Gaza. Malta also has now recognized the Palestinian state. They don't have any statement. I have no idea why in the world has Malta decided maybe this will help put them on the map more. I don't know. But let's go to Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced on this week that the country intends to recognize Palestinian statehood at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly happening in September. And he said, this is what's funny. Y'all are going to laugh. He said, quote, "This intention is predicated by the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much needed reforms." And then he explained that PA President Mahmoud Abbas, who's been in power for about 20 years now, he's like 15, 16 years over his term limit, has pledged to reform his government, the PA, because they're completely corrupt, hold elections in 2026. The last time they held elections, I believe, was 2006 or 9, something like that. And Hamas is not going to be allowed to participate in the PA's elections, as if they could stop them. And this Palestinian state is going to be demilitarized. So Canada has great faith that the Palestinian Authority is going to completely reform and hold elections, and they're going to be demilitarized, and they're going to kick Hamas out, which is just absolutely laughable. But
I got to tell you what Trump said about this. President Trump put out on his Truth Social, he said, "Wow, Canada has just announced that it is backing statehood for Palestine. That will make it very hard for us to make a trade deal with them. Oh, Canada." That's how you end it. I think that's really funny of Trump. I mean, one, the ending with "Oh, Canada" was pretty hilarious. But on top of that, he's saying, "Oh, yeah, really?" And I know, hopefully, this trade deal with America means a lot more to you than this Middle East deal that really has, what are you even doing? Just doesn't make any sense. So I'm liking that of Trump. I'm thinking that's the strength that we to see in President Trump.
And thankfully, it seems like there's still some common sense in the White House. A White House official said, quote, "As the president stated, he would be rewarding Hamas if he recognizes a Palestinian state, and he doesn't think they should be rewarded. So he's not going to do that." President Trump's focus is on getting people fed in Gaza, still focused on that. So it seems like, my question is, though, how fast will they fall? How many more countries have to add themselves to the list of recognizing a Palestinian state before eventually the United States is going to join? And they will join at some point, I believe. Whether it's in the next year, the next 3 years, or the next presidency. But at some point, I mean, that's what Zechariah says. And if we take that prophecy literally to its very core, then the United States is one day going to recognize the Palestinian state.
I think that's a good point to mention real quickly, Luke. Really gotten traction all over the world, and that's a video that Charlie Kirk put out this week, and it had the conservative Gen Z leaders of the Turning Point USA. This is the last bastion of support, it seems like, for Israel. Just a conservative Christians. Millennials were very strong Israel supporters. Before that, the generation before, strong support. He did this interview with the Gen Z leaders, and it was a very different scene. They all gathered around. This video went really viral. We had Channel 12 News here in Israel contacting us, like, whoa, and that's the leftist channel of Israel. Like, hey, they're really concerned about it. Like, this was real. It's a really
seems like a
big
lot. Like I-24 is talking about everybody's kind of.
Well, it's concerning in Israel because, wait, our conservative, strong Christian base was okay, that's the Israel supporting group. And so now they're having that shift. And this is really a little bit shaky. Is America changing at its, young people? If the young people are changing, okay, now the support for Israel is now, we just flipped the timer. And when those people become the leaders, it's over. If they keep that ideology. It was a very concerning ideology, meaning we got problems back home. Why are we talking about Israel? Is Israel really,
Was there a specific exchange that you could remember that really summarized it to its core?
I haven't seen the whole video yet, but I think that the main idea is that Gen Zers in America, even conservative amongst the conservative movement, are just asking themselves why? Why are we supposed to support Israel? Is it because our parents supported Israel, or our grandparents? Is it because the United States historically has been Israel's greatest ally? What? And they're not satisfied with that answer. To me, that's what it seems like to me, because now you have conservatives in America questioning the validity of supporting Israel from faith-based reasons. They're like, why would we support Israel even if the Bible tells us to? Like, are the, like you were saying,
the Tucker Carlson,
are the Jewish people the real Jews? Like, the Gen Zers are kind of, there's so much information coming at them, I think, is now they're just starting to become confused, and they're like, explain this to me. Like, why? Like, we have to know why, what this does for us. And because I think also the younger generation, everything is kind of based out of selfish reasons too. Like, what is this? Like, what do I get out of this? Like, what would be the reason for me to personally send money to Israel, or go to Israel, or pray for Israel, or take action for Israel? Like,
outside of a biblical context, it doesn't really make sense, right?
No, I think it certainly does.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be conveyed to them, because this question that they're asking, I think, is healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The questions need to be answered. I just wish that the Jewish people would send someone that is able to articulate the real answer to that.
That's right.
So first of all, the first explanation that needs to be given, just on one thing, is America should be America firster. I actually think that Trump is an America firster. And I think that Netanyahu should have said, when Trump sent in the B-52s, Netanyahu should have said, good for you, America. Good for you that you attacked them with us on the heels of our successful attack. You came in and did what you should do for your own interest.
That's right.
Because what these kids don't understand is just to zoom out and to see the global jihad. The global jihad is against them.
Yeah.
It's against them. There's how many Islamic attacks need to be perpetrated against America and Americans? How many times do they need to hear, first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people? Israel's the little Satan, America's the big Satan.
That's right.
The global jihad is against them. And so to stand with Israel, it's just from a purely, forget the biblical perspective, which is something, by the way, that they need to be educated on. But that aside, from a purely realpolitik, America first security perspective, Israel is the tip of the spear in the battle against the global jihad that's coming for them.
That's right.
That's just the basic.
And I 100% agree with you on that. And I believe that it only helps that when you have a biblical view of Israel. If say, for instance, they're looking at Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and they're saying, oh, well, if we're just looking at American interest at a surface level, hey, money would be really helpful right now. With the biblical view, you're like, wait. Let's make sure that we're blessing Israel. And then those blessings to America are going to flow from a biblical place. Now, from that strictly political view, and this is what I told the guys in interviews recently as well, was Israel is the most powerful ally America has in the world. And I agree with you 100% and these young people don't understand that it is 100% America first to have strong allies that are filled with Israel carries the American interest 100%. The American interest of keeping America strong, fighting Americans' wars. If there's a threat to America, it's a threat to Israel. By having Israel as an ally is only strengthening America. And if these kids understood that reality, then this would change the whole reality on the ground in America that's shifting. But to the point you were making, Luke, that America seems to be prophetically, back to Bible, a shift happening in these nations where it's just a matter of time till they fall off. If we look back historically, and Ari, I want to get your opinion on this, because if we look back historically, it's almost like every time the Jewish people in exile move nation to nation to nation, there's only like this amount of time in a godly sense that's like given to that nation to allow Jews to be there in that country. And it's like, how God raises up leaders and puts down leaders. It's all in God's hands. And I feel like in America, we're starting to see anti-Semitism rising at unbelievable levels. We never thought we would see it. You've felt that in America before. You've seen it recently when we had the Israel summit canceled. There's something shifting in America that seems beyond the natural, like the good people of America. Why is this happening? How is it stopping? How is this like seemingly time ending for the Jewish people in America? I hate to say that as an American. I don't want that to happen. I want America to be a bastion for Jewish people and be a safe haven for them. But historically, that's never happened in any country in the planet.
That's true. It's never happened. And the truth is that I love America also, very much so. And that if I didn't serve in the IDF, because this is my motherland, this is my heartland, this is my biblical God, I would have served in the American Army. Secondarily, but in the American Army. Why? Because I think America is unique in the chain of countries throughout history that in the diaspora, in the long journey of exile that the Jews have stopped in on, that is different in the sense that they are founded on biblical values.
Yep.
That is the foundation, the genetic imprint from which all of America has manifested is from that. And so there's an extra blessing in that. But I think it would be very interesting to plot through our diaspora journey, through our journey through the exile of all the different nations that we've been at. When we're in Spain, the golden era of Spain. Spain is the superpower of the world. And then the Inquisition, and they're burning Jews at the stake, and the Jews flee, and then Spain
falls.
Precipitous downfall. That is throughout all of the different stops that we've been to.
That's right.
We provide tremendous blessing. Yes, they may, from their very constraint perspective, scarcity perspective, say, well, the Jews are flourishing in wealth, and that's wealth that should be in our pockets, and it's in their pockets, not recognizing that, yes, while Israel and the Jews may have pockets of affluence, that is not at their at their expense.
Yeah.
Their affluence is from that also. It's coming from that too. So that's something that has happened, and I think America's the last stop here. It's the last stop on the train of the journey of the exile, and I just am praying for America to open their eyes from a place of righteousness and truth and strength and faith to stand with Israel, not just because the Bible says it, but also just because Look at the Israel and the nations around it and say, just from an intuitive perspective, where is righteousness and light? Maybe it's not perfect and they're not implementing their war against these jihadist, Nazi-like regimes that are seeking to wipe them out. Maybe they're not doing that as perfectly as I think that they should. But who is good here and who is evil, and where do I want to stand? And to me, that's just I'm a simple Jew. I'm a simple guy. That's the basic foundation of it.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? I don't remember what you asked me.
No, I think that's exactly the truth of the reality that's facing America right now, and facing the Jewish community, more importantly, in America. I talked to a Jewish group this week here in Israel. They're all Americans, and it was unbelievable. It was almost like an emotional moment when we got to the idea. They said, what can we do to help? I'm asking you, what can we as the nations do to help? These Jewish people looked at me and they said, what can we do to help? We love what you're doing. And my brother was standing next to me and he said, come to Israel. It was like a really emotional moment because it hit them so hard. They were not expecting it. And it was like, you are exactly right. And they were like, they took it like amazing. They were like, yeah.
Do you know how they take it when Jews say it?
Yeah, they're like,
I've made the mistake of saying that. I remember there was this terrible flooding in Houston, and I was born in Houston. I'm a fourth generation Houstonian. So someone sent me a picture, and there was a juxtaposition of like a rabbi in the synagogue holding the Torah of his head, trying to get out, and said, looking for a place to go, consider Israel, and then the amount of wrath that I faced was overwhelming. Whereas if I was from Tennessee, the Jewish community of Tennessee, and I want to beef up Jews moving to Tennessee, consider Tennessee. People are like, oh, very nice.
Fine.
Nobody would care. Nobody's offended. But when I say Israel, they do. But when you say Israel, right? Because in Psalm 126, as Yomru v'goyim higdil Hashem la'asot imena, when the nations say, look at the great thing God has done with you. Then Jews will say, look at the great things God has done with us. You can say things in a way that affect the hearts of Jews in a way that I as a Jew cannot. And by the way, conversely, I think there's also things that I can say to Christians that you as a Christian cannot. That's right. And that's why I wanted to play this little clip. It was sent to me because I had the great honor of Paula White, who is a great Christian leader in America in Trump's ear by his side. Someone said, they said your
Faith
name.
Advisory Team.
Faith Advisory Team. That's right. And so the clip was sent to me, but when I was watching the background of the clip before she said that she came out to the Aragoat farm, you'll see it. It was just, listen to what she says here. This is really important.
The culture is the best. It's got the best vegetables on the planet.
Yeah.
And the best food.
Great food, yes.
And the most beautiful culturally place. The people are so loving and so good. So not only did I start like that, but I then didn't just come back and want to see the sights. I brought thousands upon tens of thousands back to Israel because I think it's more than just praying for Israel. I really felt like Hashem, God spoke to me and said, no, go to Israel. And I have friends and deep relationships all over. So we brought grandchildren and children. We didn't go to the normal places that people would go to, Christian sites. We celebrate Shabbat. We go in bed in families. We were at Gaza. We were in Samaria. We were at Argo Farms with Jeremy and Ari. We were all over. We went coast to coast 2 weeks.
You know, sometimes I hear something and it's almost like an emotional, spiritual ambush. I'm not ready for it. And it just brings tears to my eyes. That qualifies what she really said.
Right.
Because we're right now, the nation of Israel is in a difficult position, but not only on a geographical level and a current events level, but a spiritual, historical level, because we are in the midst of the 9 days. The 9 days is a time of sadness, of grief. We don't celebrate. We don't listen to music. We don't eat meat. We're in a place of mourning as we approach the 9th of Av, which is the day that the temples were destroyed. It's a day of darkness and pain, when a lot of the divine wrath is sort of, it feels like it's like stored up and it's released on the nation of Israel on this day. It's a day of tremendous judgment and grief and sadness. And what was the first original sin on the 9th of Av? When the spies came back from the land and they shared a message of fear and of doubt and of a lack of faith. And it wasn't just a lack of faith in the land, it was a lack of faith in God. And they spoke evil about the Holy Land of Israel, about the Promised Land. And so what is the foundational rectification of that? Exactly what she just said.
Right.
Right? When I started playing the video, we just heard, I didn't hear why she said it, but she said the vegetables, the fruits. She was speaking beautifully of the land of Israel, of the land itself, of the nation of Israel, how they feel connected to it. And that's why I feel like we're about to do this 9th of Av event.
Right.
And for the first time we said, we have to have you guys on. But one could say, but what do you guys have to do with it? What role do you play in it? It's you're sitting by the side and watching us more in our temple. The whole idea is that we're opening our eyes finally and realizing that's not true. You're mourning your temple. Because the prophets say, my house is a house of prayer for all nations. The nations have just as much a reason to mourn the destruction of the temple and to yearn for its construction as the people of Israel do.
Right.
And for you to come in and to weigh in on that, it's your right. It's your right. And it's finally from a place of us realizing that this isn't just about us.
Yeah.
This is about you and taking that responsibility. And so I can't help but to look at the holy Paula White. Yes, she's Christian. I'm a Jew. How can I call her holy? And I know all the emails I'm going to get from fellow Jews. How can I call her holy? Because she's holy. Because she's holy. Because she's speaking beautiful truths, courageous truths about the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, and the God of Israel.
Well, I think there's two rectifications happening, and there's one from your perspective as a Jewish religious man. There's so much depth of the Jewish people when it comes to this, where they're looking inside at this point, right? And like, what is going on? How can we draw near to God? How can we see this happen where the temple is restored and we're restored in relationship, a broken relationship with God, and see this, the unity of the Jewish people again, where it was broken in such terrible ways. From the nation side, it's different. From the nation side, they're looking at it like it's very physical. We destroyed this place. We destroyed. We were the physical reality of that destruction. We did it. The Jewish people, of course, looking internally. They're not looking at us and saying, "Oh, you look at this terrible things." I mean, maybe
we're going to spend 25 hours sitting on the floor. We never say the Romans, the Babylonians. They're the ones that did it. It's their fault. We're always saying it is our sins. It is our idolatry and our baseless hatred of each other and our lack of faith.
Which I think is beautiful, but at the same time, as we go through these 9 days, very few of the nations even know about these 9 days. And that's what really the call on Sunday is going to be about, is to helping to bring understanding of, wait, this really not only affects the Jewish people, but when the nations understand how powerful this redemption is and this rectification that's happening, and the nations say, what can we do to be a part of fixing this? I think what Paula White's doing there is a part of that fixing. Like there's a physical reality of coming, building up the land, speaking positively of the land when the whole world is misconstruing things and turning children that have illnesses in Gaza into some crime against them, saying that they're actually malnourished of some sort. No, taking pictures and demonizing the Jewish people when they're misinforming the nations. It's part of that destruction that the nations have historically done. We want to change that. We want to say, no, we want to be a part of the building up of Israel, not the destruction of this people, not the demonization, but the glorification of the people of Israel in a godly, beautiful way. And so we want to be a part of that.
I believe we can actually, I think I have a link we can put in the description below for you guys to join the call on Sunday. I believe it's open invitation. I think it's 6 p.m. Sunday, this coming Sunday, 6 p.m. Israel time Sunday night. So whatever time that is for you.
That's going to be live.
The world. So yeah, I'll put more information about that in the description below. Guys, to wrap up kind of this topic, going back to the idea of the nations trying to force a Palestinian state, this is some pretty positive news out of Israel. Just this week, the government of Israel has allocated 508 million shekels, which is $138 million, to improve road safety in Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. Not only that, basically they're investing almost $150 million into the roads in Judea and Samaria. Not only that, but last week we talked about 71 out of the 120 Knesset members voted in favor of a resolution for Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And last year, the Knesset voted 99 for and only 11 against to reject unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Why do we say all that? Because Judea and Samaria is never going to become a Palestinian state. East Jerusalem, any part of Jerusalem, the so-called West Bank, what people call the occupied territories, there will never be a Palestinian state here. It doesn't matter if the UK, if Canada, if Malta, if France, even if the United States or any other country or if every country around the world votes in favor of creating a Palestinian state, it's not going to happen.
It's not up for vote.
They're the 800,000 Israeli Jews that live in these areas. They're not going anywhere. And I think, Josh, you wrote farms down here. The farms are a positive realization of that fact as well. The hundreds and thousands of acres that are now thriving and being developed, and the thousands of cattle, and the hundreds of acres of vineyards and the olive groves and the beautiful farming and the beautiful Jewish communities now in the hundreds. They're all a direct fulfillment of biblical prophecy and a direct statement.
Yeah, we talked about
Israel
building
is
up.
here to stay.
Just this week, our volunteer teams on the ground helped to claim nearly 1,000 acres of Israeli farmland with Jewish farmers in partnership with them. That sounds like building up. Within the 9 days, that's such a powerful thing to say. The nations partnered, coming together to help build up the land of Israel.
You were just saying, you feel like I would maybe debate that, but you feel like you played a part in the destruction, right, of Israel, and now you are rectifying.
That's right, and I feel like that's how the nations should see it. I think, like as an internal, looking inside as the nations. How do we fix something? Not just looking at the nation. Most of the nations look at Israel like, how do we fix them? No, that's not the right. The Jewish people are leading on how you should look at this. Do the people that come here on Hayovel, do they understand why they're doing what they're doing? How do they feel about? No, I think so. I think it's a really deep, powerful thing. And when they see, it's not just in your face, France. Canada. It's not like that. It's more.
Well, it's like Paula White said. We're choosing to focus on the good, on the positivity of spreading the good report from the land of Israel.
And that's why what she said and what you guys do is so critical, because I was having some debate on one of the groups that we're in together, and I don't remember if it was you. I think maybe your brother. I was like, we got to say to Tucker Carlson, we got to say this. We got to point out the replacement theology and this. And he's like, you know what? You can say a lot of things. But ultimately, what changes people is experiential.
Yeah.
You need to come to the land. You need to breathe the air. You need to walk the earth. You need to see things with your own eyes to really understand what's going on.
That's right. Guys, we're running out of time, but make sure you subscribe. Make sure you find out about the Tisha B'Av, 9th of Av event happening this Sunday with myself and Josh and Ari and Jeremy on the Land of Israel Network, or the Land of Israel Fellowship. We'll have that link down in the description below. Make sure to check out blessedbuyisrael.com. The link will also be in the description below for that, to invest in small businesses here in Judea and Samaria, Jewish family-owned businesses, and get beautiful products shipped to your door. Guys, as always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what's happening in the land of Israel. We'll be back soon here at the Israel Guys.